So welcome to Rebbe Nachman's Torah and Radiant Torah. And what we're going to be doing today is, first I have to unmute people, sorry. If you guys could mute yourselves, that would be great. If you're not muted, okay, wonderful. And what we're going to be doing today is we're going to be covering a double Torah portion that is intensely emotional for some people and controversial for some people. And I first of all would like to thank Dr. Eleanor Gaudas for sponsoring this class, and may it be a schus for her for brachas and hatzlacha and everything good, all the brachas of the Torah, which certainly, most of which are contained in these two parshas. Okay, so we're going to begin with an overview of the parsha. Hold on a second. And Behar is a parsha that speaks about the Shmitta year, the sabbatical year, which we observe in the land of Israel, but it affects us here in the diaspora. We observe it every 7 years. And this year, I think it starts September 7th is Rosh Hashanah. That's when it begins. Okay. So we understand that every 7 years, there is an obligation to keep the Shmitta year, and how it affects us, I'm going to also discuss. So we begin with, I'm sorry, whoever just joined, please mute yourself if possible. Okay. So we begin with the Shmitta year, and during that year, it is forbidden to work the land in the land of Israel. And that means it's forbidden to plant, to harvest, to grow. As a matter of fact, you can't even water the land, okay, obviously except for rain. You can't even water it if there's the potential that it's going to grow crops, unless, of course, it's just to prevent pre-existing plant life from dying, okay? And during this sabbatical year, we understand that loans are canceled and slaves are set free in the seventh, especially in the seventh sabbatical year, which is the Yovel, the Jubilee. And the whole point of this 7-year period, excuse me, I'm just trying to figure out how to get a speaker view, which I can't do. Okay. Is Charlene here, by the way?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay, can you keep checking those the people coming into the room for me?
Yes, I'm checking. Whenever you don't need to do anything. I've been here since the beginning.
Thank you. Okay.
No problem.
Appreciate it. Tiskel mitzvahs. So okay. You just have to wait for whoever's in to please mute yourself. Would you mind muting whoever's not muted?
I will make you a key for the upper lock.
With whoever's, thank you. Okay. All right. So anyway, what happens in the 7th year when we can't eat? Okay, what kind of crazy law is this? This is not necessarily a chok for some. If you're an environmentalist, it makes sense. You want the land to rest. You want the land to regenerate. As a matter of fact, all the bio farmers and the organic farmers and all those know that you have to rotate crops and also allow the land to rest. But that's not the main reason for the law. The main reasons for the law are psychospiritual. The main reasons for the law don't depend on these natural and biological needs. Why?
Chaya Rivka?
Yes?
I'm so sorry. Can you make me a co-host so I can let people in?
Oh, sure. Hold on.
Sorry,
Charlene. Okay, it's just one of those days, everyone. We're talking about a really important topic. Okay, so we're preparing for the Shmitta year, which is coming up. And what we have to understand is that if Hashem wanted, he could make it so that the land wouldn't have to rest 7 years. But it wasn't for the land to rest. It was for us to rest. As a matter of fact, when the land isn't being harvested and tilled and planted and taken care of, when the crops aren't being gathered and sold, what do we do? So anybody who is in agriculture in Eretz Israel is enjoined, commanded by Hashem to make that time a sabbatical for themselves when they learn Torah and they spend time in davening. I could include Hitbodedut, by the way, of course. So this idea is this is what goes on during this time. Now, Hashem wants us to be able to focus on spiritual needs during this time. So what does he do? He promises us, he blesses the 6 years harvest, that it's going to produce enough to last for 3 years. Because the year after the Shmitta, you're just beginning to plant. And that you need that extra harvest. You need the extra fruit and vegetables. Now, there are people today, by the way, across the board, many communities, very religious communities and non-religious communities at all, there are farmers who receive funds to sit and learn Torah. Now, they're not making a big profit, but they're making enough money to get by during this year. And by the way, it's a mitzvah to contribute to these funds. Every 7 years, right before Shmitta, you'll see ads for these funds. And if you want to contribute to them, it's a significant mitzvah. I encourage you to do it, because what you're doing is you're supporting people living in the land the way they're supposed to be. Now, what happens if we don't follow the laws of Shmitta? Instead of letting the land lie fallow in the 7th year, we work the land, we sell the produce, and so on. So what happens is actually something amazing. Not only is there a desolation of the land, which would be an obvious connection to this lack of observing this mitzvah, but even more, we, God forbid, are sent into exile. Jews who don't keep this are sent into exile. Now, today we see Jews farming who aren't keeping the Shmitta laws. Many are, by the way. I want you to know that, but they're still there. So what does this mean, sent into exile? So during the times of the biblical times when this took place, originally Jews stopped observing the laws of Shmitta, and they were sent into exile. They were sent into exile for many reasons, okay? But today, we can also understand this to mean that when we don't keep these laws, we're sent into a spiritual exile, a concealment of Hashem, even a double concealment of Hashem, which is when the person who doesn't keep the laws doesn't even think about the fact that they're not connecting to Hashem and following his Torah. Hashem is so hidden from them, they don't even know to look for him. Baruch Hashem, we're all looking for him here, okay? And Baruch Hashem, there's a worldwide movement to look for Hashem. So what I want to do is, before we continue with the psychospiritual aspects, and especially the link to Bitachon, to trust in God, and to wealth, I want to just explain very briefly how these laws affect us, because it is coming up and we need to know it. So I'm assuming I don't see anyone here from Israel today, but even if you are, you can pay attention to it, but I'm going to address the laws to us in the diaspora. So all fruits, vegetables, grains, beans, and so on, that is produce that grow in Israel are subject to Shmitta laws. So what happens is that us outside of Israel have to be very, very careful about what we buy during this next year or two. We don't want to buy vegetables or fruits that are grown in Israel, because they're, even the stuff that is allowed to be given out for free or collected for free, which I'll go into, still not allowed to be exported. Now, I want to tell you, the last time we had a Shmitta year, I was in a regular store. I wasn't in the produce store in my neighborhood, which was very careful not to buy Shmitta produce. I was in a ShopRite, and I saw these beautiful carrots. They look like carrots on steroids. And normally I buy organic carrots, but these were so gorgeous, I wanted to buy them. So I started to fill a bag up with these carrots, and a light bulb went off in my head. And I said to the produce guy, I see Naomi's nodding. I said to the produce guy, I called him over. I said, listen, could you help me? Do you know where these carrots come from? He said, I don't know. I said, could you show me the box they came in? He took me back. He allowed me to peek in the door. And sure enough, they were from Israel. Just so happy that Hashem caught me before I bought these carrots. So this is something we really want to be aware of. Now, many people want to support Israel. They want to support the farmers there and so on. The way we do this the next year or two, depending on the produce that you're buying, is to give tzedakah to these funds that make a special kollel where the farmers can sit and learn Torah. And there's many different ones. There's this kind of Sephardic farmer, and that kind of Ashkenaz farmer, and this one who's Breslov, and that one's who's this. It doesn't matter. It's all good. Okay. Why? Because unity is another theme of Shmitta, and we're going to get there. Okay. So there are some places that are in the contiguous land today that aren't subject to Shmitta laws because they weren't in the land during biblical times. For details of that, you can look it up. We can talk about it another time. And especially like in the Negev and Eilat and so on. So, and the other thing is that wine is a big problem too. As a matter of fact, grapes are a huge problem to begin with because wine and grapes must be supervised by Jews and must be every step watched by Jews, okay? And this is because of the link between idolatry and substances, mind-altering substances. Specifically in those days, it was mainly wine. I don't think it was only wine, but it was mainly wine. And what would happen is a lot of people who were from the nations would use wine, grapes, and so on, though that product, brandy, and so on, in their idol worshiping ceremonies. So we are very careful to only use wine produced by Jews, and if not, at least make sure the wine or grape juice is mevushal, which is boiled. It's brought up to a very high temperature, which negates the category of sacrificial wine for other religions. It's no longer considered in that category. There are various reasons for it. And then you can drink it. But during this next year or two, you want to be very careful not to drink wine. As a matter of fact, you want to read the labels on bottles forever if you're buying Israeli wine. Because if you don't recall what a Shmitta year is, you might get that wine by accident. Now, there are a lot of wineries in the Golan Heights, and some people say the Golan isn't included in this portion, in this requirement for Shmitta. Most Rabbanim say it is. All these various details, okay, you can ask your rabbi, your Rav, what is the best way to hold by. Or you can, of course, you can always call me, contact me, and I'll just tell you what I do. And what I do is very specific. Now, what happens with the produce that grows during this time? Because if there's produce that's there, does it go to waste? I mean, what happens? So anything that has grown during this time, you know, because it was harvested, because it was, planted before, or because it's something that reoccurs, a kind of crop that reoccurs, it must be declared hefker, ownerless. And then people are allowed to come into the fields just like they were when? In Rus's day. Okay, Shavuos is coming up. We're going to read Megillas Rus. There is a connection to the Shmitta. Okay, she's going to be able to come just like anybody who's able to come and pick that produce. Now there are, and also the people who own the fields, the farmers themselves can come and pick enough for their own use. They can gather enough for their own use. Now, there are in place various halachic solutions to allowing all this food to go to waste and how to sell it. If it's not actually a sale, but where a base din buys the food and they distribute it, and they just pay the farmers for their time, but not the food. All of these constructs, some of them are legally correct and some aren't, which is why you need to ask a rabbi, okay, if you go to Israel and you want to eat something there. All right. Now, the produce from Israel in general, okay, should be treated with some respect, okay? But specifically in Shmitta year, if you're visiting Israel and you're eating produce that was hefker, you can't throw peels, cores, and other waste parts into the garbage. If you are taking tithes from produce, which we take always in Israel, which is another parsha, then you can wrap them up, like double bag them or whatever, and you can put them in the garbage. But Shmitta the produce, the waste from Shmitta produce must rot first. You can't just throw it out, okay? Because it has sanctity. It's a special mitzvah, okay? You know, one of the amazing things about this mitzvah is that it's a really material mitzvah. Lighting candles, making kiddush, giving tzedakah, which can feel material, but not always. You write a check, you don't actually handle the dough, so to speak. We know that they're spiritual. We have that connection. We know they're material, but this mitzvah feels really material. We are talking about banana peels, avocado skins, apple peels, okay? The core, the inedible core, papaya pits, whatever it is, the inedible portions, we can't throw them out, okay? Can you compost? That's another subject for another time. You can, but how you handle the compost afterwards is an issue. Okay, now, no benefit may be derived from this. I mentioned before you can't water the ground. Plants are going to benefit. If you're going to just keep existing land coverage there from dying out, you may. You can't even spit pits on the ground unless they're really inedible, okay? There's a question of what's inedible. Okay, this is if, God willing, we'll all be in Israel this year together. So we need to know these laws. We need to know them here too. Okay. So that's the overview of the laws as it affects us. There are many more details. I encourage you to, find a source. I can certainly point you in the right direction and find what you need to be responsible for. It's actually not that big a deal. Also, you should know, I want to say something that I rely on quite a bit. Hydroponic vegetables are not considered Shmitta. They're not attached to the ground. So in my neighborhood, all year long, they sell hydroponic scallions from Israel and herbs from Israel and other things. Those are totally fine, okay, because they are hydroponic. And you will see they'll have an extra special hechsher on them usually during Shmitta year. Also, anything that grows outside of Israel is fine. Any vegetable or fruit. Okay. Now, what's interesting is there are actually many kashrus laws connected with produce that people do not necessarily have full awareness of. And as we go through this year, we're just going to talk about them. We're going to touch on them and also their spiritual meaning. Okay. So let's begin with the psychospiritual concept of Shmitta, the concept of sevenths, okay? So obviously, if something is a sabbatical, okay, which is the English word, okay, they took out the shin and made it into a sin in English, okay, it's Shabbat, okay, like a Sabbatical, okay? So the Shmitta is recognized as a seventh, and it's a Shabbat for the land and for us. What happens on Shabbat? Shabbat, we shut out the world and we go into the spiritual realm. Even our eating on Shabbat, okay, is spiritual. As a matter of fact, the time that we spend on Shabbat, on Shabbos, is a sacred space and a sacred time. They're intertwined, they're joined together, and all the blessings that we receive come from the Shabbat. They come from Shabbos. Just as all the blessings we receive from the land come from the Shmitta rest. Why? Okay, they come from other things too here, but why specifically this seventh cycle, this seventh period of the seventh cycle of rest? Because during this time, we go full board, full on into Amunah and Bitachon. This is the time where we don't rely on ourselves to produce. For a farmer, especially a farmer, somebody who's in agriculture, relies more than anyone else on his own efforts. He really does. He gets up very early. He plows the land. He gets the seeds. He plants them. He waters it. He washes over it. He weeds it. He harvests it. He prays for rain. Okay. So this is actually a lesson for us about who we are. All week long, what are we doing? We're working. We're working in the home, or we're working outside the home, or both. We are, as Hannah, I don't know if she's here today, I don't know if she could come, planting seeds all the time, watering them, nurturing them, taking out the weeds. I'm speaking metaphorically, obviously. There she is. She heard. Okay, taking out the weeds and so on. Okay. That's what we're doing all week long with our jobs, with raising families, with building communities. That's what we're doing. And on Shabbat, we stop. Hashem stopped. He stopped creating on that day, and we stop. And it's an acknowledgement that Hashem's in charge. All week long, it can be easy to forget. We shouldn't forget. We should remind ourselves. But on Shabbat, there's no escape. Who's in charge? Hashem. Who's supplying that flow to us? Hashem. I'm sure you all know stories of Jews who came here, could be your own relatives, and struggled with Shabbos when they got off the boat. Okay, they struggled with Shabbos. In the old country, most of them kept Shabbos, not everyone, but most did. And they came here, and the infrastructure, the Jewish infrastructure, may or may not have been in place depending where they lived. And they were told, if you don't work on Shabbos, what happens? You're going to lose your job. I personally knew people, they're no longer with us in this world, but I now know their children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren who came here and who every week, I probably know people like this or have heard about them, who every week would lose their job. They'd work Monday through Friday, and their boss would say, if you don't come in tomorrow, and unfortunately many of these bosses were Jewish, but not all, not most, but some. If you don't come in tomorrow on Shabbos, that's it, you're fired. They wouldn't come in, and then that next Monday, they'd have to go and look for work again. Now, for other people, the struggle, it was too great, and they succumbed. Today, Baruch Hashem, we are living in a land of kindness. We really are, no matter what's going on politically, in which you are not allowed to be fired for keeping your Sabbath. Okay, and all the laws that apply to the non-Jews also apply to us. You can't be forced to work on your Sabbath or your holiday. So today it's much, much easier, obviously, in terms of Parnassa. But still, those people who allow themselves to be fired when those laws weren't in place, no human rights laws, none of that stuff. Okay, what did they rely on? They had no law. They couldn't call a lawyer. They couldn't call the ACLU. They couldn't call this group, that group. They couldn't complain to their congressman because nobody cared. You don't show up. Saturday's a work day. You're fired. So what did they rely on? They relied on something called Bitachon, which is a main theme of this parsha, and of the Hasidic Rebbeim, the Hasidic teachings. Amunah is faith, and Bitachon is trust. Betach, certainly. It's trust. It's surety. It's knowing that Hashem is going to take care of you. And we see time and time again in the Shmitta years that more and more, every 7 years, more and more farmers take this on. And again, many of them aren't religious. They have just a feeling for Hashem, and they have a feeling of trust. Well, for a few thousand years, people didn't starve. They didn't starve in the Shmitta year or the year after. Hashem says there will be more produce. Okay, so what will we do? We'll honor the Shmitta the same way we honor the Shabbos, the same way we honor Shabbat. And that trust also produces a feeling of not everything's relying on me. I'm a partner with Hashem in this. And this idea is that we are reminded of Hashem in a small way every week on Shabbos. It's not such a small way. And in a big way, a bigger way, or more dramatic way, every 7th year in the Shmitta year. And it's a very beautiful mitzvah. I already told you what the consequences were for not keeping it. But I want to go into briefly, and there's so much here today. I really want to go into briefly why 7. So there's a lot in the midrash on why 7. So why is 7th the most precious? Because Hashem usually distinguishes the 7th in a series as being the most beloved to him. For example, there are, and I just want to briefly say what the midrash says, 7 heavens, and the 7th, which is Aravos, is the most precious to Hashem. The world is divided into 7 regions. Okay, what's the most precious to Hashem? Okay, Israel, right? Eretz Yisrael. Okay. Also, the leaders of the generations of mankind. The 7th was the one we honor most. There was Adam, Shes, Enosh, Canaan, Mahalalel, Yered, and Hanoch. And we know that Hanoch went up to heaven. He was one of the few people who went up to heaven and entered Gan Eden alive. Okay, and he was considered the wisest man after Adam Harishon, Adam, the first human being. Okay, now of all the forefathers and builders of the Jewish people, the 7th was the one who surpassed all others. Who? Moshe Rabbeinu. Okay, we know that he was the greatest prophet who ever lived. Yishai, the father of David. Okay, who we know we're going to connect to in Shavuos, and we're going to be talking about that, if not this week, next week. David was the 7th son. Okay, Shabbos is the 7th day. It's the most precious to Hashem. The 7th month is Tishrei. The world was created during that month. If you're counting from Nisan, but if you're counting from Tishrei, that's the first month. We have a few New Years. Okay, and okay, so those are some of these 7ths. This concept of 7th is something set aside and special. Now, I have something from Reb Nosson that I want to share with you that I thought was very powerful. What is Shmitta from a spiritual point of view? So he explains that after Adam sinned, he ate from the tree, he was cursed. We know that there was a curse to work the land. No longer did everything grow on trees. Okay, in Gan Eden, everything you wanted grew on a tree. Fully formed bread, for example. Okay, because you had to have bread on Shabbat. So Adam didn't have to pick the wheat and winnow it and husk it and grind it into flour. It was already fully formed for him. Wine was fully formed for him. Everything was fully formed for him. But when Adam sinned, he was cursed to toil the land. And the mitzvah of the Shemitta actually rectifies. It's a tikkun from the sin of Adam Harishon. Okay. And it's connected to this concept of Shabbos. And we receive in the Shmitta year similar blessings to the blessings of Shabbos. Now, during the Shmitta year, the land, everything, all the produce is declared, as I said before, hefker. Anyone can take it, okay, not to sell, but for their own use. And this also is a tikkun for Adam Harishon because he sought to separate himself from Hashem. He sought to make his own autonomy greater when he ate the fruit. There are a lot of reasons he ate the fruit. That's considered one of the undercurrents. And that separation is something that Shmitta and Shabbos are a rectification for, in which we understand we are not really separate from Hashem. It brings this awareness of connection. The more we believe that, the more we have that awareness, the more we live our lives with this emunah, with this bitachon. When we hear what happened, for example, in Meron, just recently, we don't say why. We cry with the families that lost sons and husbands and fathers and brothers. We comfort them, we mourn with them. Okay, we may even seek solutions to future crowd issues, but we don't ask why, because we are connected to Hashem and we understand that we don't understand everything. And Adam wanted to understand everything. And as great as Adam Harishon, the first man, was, he still didn't have Hashem's intellect, because the created can't have the intellect of the creator. It's impossible. Okay, think about it. Otherwise, he could have created himself. All right. So first off, we learn about this separateness. The other thing we learn about is this idea of unity. Not only unity with Hashem, but unity with each other. Why? Because Adam Harishon was the original soul. And each of us is part of that soul. We feel very separate. Hashem gave us our own identities. And as a matter of fact, each of us is called an olam, a world, a universe unto ourselves. So Rochelle and Naomi, your worlds, as much as you might get together and be friends and support each other, I don't know if you know each other, but whatever, your worlds are still separate, but there's an underlying connection. We are all one soul. And that's another message we learn for Shmitta, this message of unity. Because what happens at that time, all the produce is hefker, it's ownerless. Everybody can take what they need. Nobody takes more than what they need. This reminds you of the man. It's an interesting connection too. Nobody takes more of what they need. And during this time, another thing that happens during Shmitta is that interest, okay, that, loans are forgiven. Now there is something called prosbul, which which is another halachic tool to help people who wouldn't lend money out if they thought their loans wouldn't be repaid. But there's obviously a reduction in a way of property rights on Shmitta, because if anybody can come into your land and take the produce they need, or anybody can not pay back a loan, okay, this is something that we understand is a sign of unity and togetherness. It's not a sign of socialism, okay? Even though it might look like it, it's not. It's a sign of the recognition that we all come from the same place. The other thing we have to know is that this whole process comes together. I said I was going to speak about wealth and prosperity. This whole process comes together from this concept of unity and the concept I mentioned before that, Bitachon, trust in Hashem. When we feel that we are part of each other, one big family, for real, and we have trust that Hashem provides, we understand that even though we may have property and ownership, and we do, there are halachas about ownership. We certainly wouldn't want to take something belonging to someone else. At the same time, the ultimate goal is to distribute what Hashem gives us to others, to ourselves in an equitable manner, according to the laws of Torah. Okay, does everybody understand that? I said a mouthful there. Does anybody have a question about that? No. Okay.
Yes, actually, you said we should distribute.
Right.
Okay, so that wasn't mentioned earlier, I don't think, because earlier we were told we could take what we needed. Could you explain a little more about that?
So when I'm talking about, so that's a great question. When I'm talking about distribution, what I'm talking about is that when a farmer has a property, okay, when a farmer has a property and he opens his property up and everybody can take what's on the ground, that is a form of passive distribution. But I'm also talking about the message, which all the Hasidic masters link to Shmitta, which is this idea of giving tzedakah and this idea of sharing with others. This is the recognition of the baseline unity we have, and also a recognition that everything comes from Hashem anyway. It's two ideas that come together in this. So Hashem, okay, supplies us his bounty, his shefa, his flow, and it's up to us to distribute it, meaning that we take 10%, 20%, depending, and we make sure that that goes to other Jews who need it. Now, Rebbe Nachman teaches something. He teaches a lot about this topic, and I really want to share it with you today because I think it's very important. And I think it's something that's helped me a lot in my life. And it's helped me do what I do, and it's helped me in the way I give tzedakah with a lot less of attachment to the idea of anything beyond I'm doing the mitzvah that Hashem gave me to do. And it was very helpful to me. This idea is that we look around today and we see that there are some people who are flagrantly not, I won't go into them, they're in the news, whatever, not great people. And they don't give tzedakah, or they do whatever they do, and they're fabulously wealthy. And then we see people, ordinary people, okay, who are good people, who keep the Torah, who love Hashem, who have emunah and bitachon, and they are struggling in poverty. And Rebbe Nachman says, of course, this doesn't make sense, because Hashem promises, if you keep my laws, you will be taken care of. And he says, by rights, all Jews should be wealthy. And as a matter of fact, in the time of Mashiach, we are told, the midrash, we're told in other places, that every Jew is going to have more than enough. They're going to have what they need. Why? Because we're going to be spending most of our time really heavily involved in Torah and mitzvahs, and we're just going to need to be able to have the peace of mind to do what we need to do to serve Hashem without worrying about making a living. Okay, we're going to get to that concept in a minute about that in the connection to Shmitta. So why do we see what we see? Why do we see this disparity? And we all know absolutely wonderful people who can barely make ends meet. And we've read about, hopefully we don't know them personally, but we've read about people who are less than stellar, who, seem to be tremendously wealthy. I mean, whatever. Why is this? So this concept is that until Mashiach comes, the pipelines are crossed. And Hashem gives everyone the opportunity to fulfill their tafkid in their own way. So for example, a wealthy person is going to face many, many tests in their life. As a matter of fact, the rabbis say the test of money is harder than the test of poverty, because with the test of poverty, you're always crying out to Hashem. Okay? You're always crying out to Hashem for help. You really believe that everything's coming from him, because you see, a person who's struggling sees it. They could try this, they could try that, and they're not successful. And then someone else, it just seems like it pours down onto them. Their test is harder because it's harder for them to develop emunah and bitachon than it is for a poor person. I am very blessed in that I know people who are very successful who have tremendous emunah and bitachon. It's to an enormous credit because it's such a difficult thing. Okay, it's difficult. All right. But this idea doesn't come down just to money. Okay, it comes down to everything. All our prosperity, our material prosperity, our monetary, our spiritual prosperity, okay, our personal situations, our situations with not just real basic gashmias such as food and clothing and housing and so on, but also our situations with family, with health. The more we begin to understand that this all comes from Hashem, the more we rely on Hashem, the more Hashem gives us a reason to rely on him. This is a known and proven segula. Okay? The more we trust in Hashem, the more Hashem gives us a reason to trust in him. The more we hope to Hashem, the more Hashem gives us a reason to hope to him. Why? Does Hashem need us to trust in him? Does he need us to hope in him? No. We need to do that. We need to do that because that strengthens our connection to him. And Shmitta is this incredible opportunity when we review this concept and these laws. It's an incredible opportunity to review the concept of, not for sure, but especially bitachon, living with trust that Hashem is going to supply. I really think we can all look to these farmers, some of whom it's just incredible. It's just the idea comes to them. I'm a farmer. All right, I believe in Hashem, whatever, but I'm going to really try this year. Every year, more and more farmers do this. And every year we hear miracle stories after miracle stories after miracle stories. Personally, I know one personally. I'll tell it another time. It's too long. But this idea is that the more we show Hashem that we really believe not only what we're supposed to believe, but what he tells us to believe, which is, hey, take a break, take a sabbatical, keep Shabbos, keep the Shmitta laws, you will be blessed. As a matter of fact, he tells us a lot of the blessings that come to us. I want to read some of the blessings that come to us for keeping the Shmitta, as well as in general, the blessings that come to us for, I just have to find them. I know okay. And the blessings that come to us for keeping the Torah in general. Okay. So in the second part of our double parsha, the Behar-Bechukotai, Hashem promises to bless everyone for studying, for learning Torah and fulfilling Torah. And if studying Torah is difficult for you, you can only do a little bit, know that your little bit, okay, whatever that little bit is, okay, is good. And if you support people studying Torah, especially the mitzvah specifically towards men, but women must study Torah too, because we must know the laws we need to know, the halachas, and we must be inspired, okay? We have to be connected, all right? So if you study Torah, great. If you can support others studying Torah, great. Whatever you do brings blessings to you. It brings blessings and all the blessings, not just gashmis, not just good health, not just spiritual blessings. So what are these blessings? Okay, so specifically for fulfilling the Torah, especially the laws of Shmitta, the first bracha is rain at the right time. Rain that produces fruit and vegetables, okay? This is the first blessing. Why? Because it determines the quality of the crop and the climate in which people live, and therefore determines our health. And health is essential to fulfilling the Torah. Now, we know people who struggle with health. They should all have a refuah shlema immediately, please. And they struggle with health. And we know that it's much harder to connect to Hashem, to think about spiritual things when you're not feeling well. It's difficult because you're feeling the intense feelings of your body and whatever. So this is a very important blessing. People don't understand what this blessing of rain is, but this blessing of rain is intimately connected to good health. It's connected. Geshem, rain, is the same root as the word gashmiut, which means material things. And so there's a connection to very simple baseline material things, okay? Housing, food, shelter, and health. That's number one. Now, and I do want to say really something interesting. So the midrash says something amazing. It says that, or actually the Maharal says this, that the rain that was spoken about in this parsha will only fall, this is the blessing we receive for fulfilling Torah, will only fall on Wednesday nights and Friday nights. Who knew? Why? Because Wednesday nights, it says that's when there are negative forces, the mazikin, who roam outdoors in the dark. Okay, it's a lot of negative energy on a Wednesday night. Okay, and Friday nights when everybody's in their home gathered around the Shabbos table. So people had a tendency to not go out Wednesday nights in those days and to not go out Friday nights today still. We're home with our families at Shabbos. So that's when the rain would fall. Okay, next. It says, fulfilling the Torah, including keeping the Shemitta, the soil and the trees will be as productive as they were in Adam Harishon's time, in the first human being's time. Okay, so what would happen? I told you briefly before, the bread would grow on trees, wine was already, but plants will mature on the same day their seeds are sown. Fruit trees will bear fruit in one day. Okay, so you plant a fruit, you plant a peach tree, and that afternoon you're going to be able to harvest your peaches. There will be no barren trees. All tree will produce some kind of edible fruit. Today we know that's not true. I mean, most people, well, I guess some people eat acorns, but most people don't eat the fruit of oak trees or maple syrup. Okay, I'm just hitting the wrong trees at this moment. Every tree I think of has an edible fruit. Pine trees have pine nuts, but you get the picture. There are many trees we don't harvest fruit from, and their bark will be edible as well. Okay, these were the brachas. These all existed in Gan Eden, in the Garden of Eden when Adam was created. Okay, the soil would bring forth delicious cakes. Okay, and I'm assuming they were healthy cakes. And mountains would run with sweet juice, fruit juice. Okay, this is what we were told was in Gan Eden. Now, this means literally, it also is a metaphor for spiritual bounty, but we also know that this will exist when during the times of Mashiach. And the first one, that you plant a seed, and that day the produce will grow to fruition, is akin to this idea in the times of Mashiach that a woman will be able to conceive a baby and give birth that same day. She won't have to go through 9 months of pregnancy, morning sickness, and so on and so forth. It will be fairly instant. Okay. And she will have multiple births. That's what we're taught about the times of Mashiach. Okay. Abundance, another bracha, abundance. Okay. Abundance. But at the same time, contentment with little. What does this mean? So we know David HaMelech, King David, lived in a palace, but he didn't look at his palace. He only looked at the Torah. He only looked at Hashem. We will all be like that. We will all be like that. The comforts and luxuries that we will all have, they won't supply us with anything except the peace of mind for spiritual pursuits. That's a very big blessing when you think about it, because we all have situations where we have comforts and we're still struggling with spiritual pursuits, or we don't have comfort, so we're struggling to be comfortable. Whatever it is, those struggles will be gone. Another blessing from fulfilling all the laws of Torah and keeping the Shmitta year, especially because it's connected to that Parsha, is the blessing of shalom, peace. Not only peace between us and our enemies who are out to get us, which is true, they exist in this world, but peace between each other. Peace between each other. We'll all, why? Because we have that unity. It's going back to that unity. Okay. We'll all understand that we come from one soul and we all have our unique individual part to play. Okay. Next, with the peace, any wild beasts, by the way, that are in Israel will be harmless, just as they were before Adam sinned. Okay, everything will be harmless. All right. As a matter of fact, because I'll say that it isn't the snake which kills, it's the sin which kills, because it's us moving away from living the way we're supposed to be, that it gives us power and energy to beasts to do harm. Human beasts too, I would include in that. Okay, another thing, miraculous victories. Okay, so if there needs to be a war, okay, one Jew can vanquish 20 enemies or more. Okay, growing numbers and a happy family life. Okay, from fulfilling the Torah, from connecting to the Torah, we see large numbers, big families. That's a blessing in this world. It's crazy. We hear that this is not a blessing. There's so many people out there in this world telling people, what's wrong with you and your big families? What's wrong with you? It's not, it's a blessing. It's a gift from God. Okay. Anybody who's ever struggled having children knows this. Okay. Next, this is also interesting. Another blessing. The harvest will improve with age. Okay. We think now that if we pick something fresh, it's better. But the midrash assures us, and Chazal say, that anything that's stored, old grains and so on, will be so delicious, people won't even want to eat the new stuff. Nothing is going to go bad, which is a very interesting idea. Nothing is going to spoil. Everything's going to be productive and delicious. Okay. Next, the Shekhinah will dwell in our midst. Okay. When we connect to the Torah, fulfill the Torah, seek the Torah, learn the Torah, each at our own pace, at our own level. Okay. We have to all work towards this in our own way. But when we do, the Shekhinah the divine feminine presence of Hashem dwells in our midst. Today we know she only dwells at the Kosel, at the Kotel, okay, at the Western Wall. But when she's in our midst, we are all going to walk around in a spiritual high, okay? It's going to be a beautiful feeling. Next, no fatal sickness, okay? Okay, people will not get sick, chronically ill over time and so on. They will die of old age, okay? So that's something I actually inverted the words, but that's something also. So there's so many blessings here. I don't want to actually go into the curses. So all these blessings for anybody who knows about the times of Mashiach understands that the blessings in these parshas, the first that we have the laws of Shmitta, okay? And then we have the blessings, and then we have the curses, which I don't even like to talk about, so we won't. All right. But we have the blessings intimately tied up with in how we view the land. Why is this important? Because what we have to understand is, it's very important to understand that Eretz Yisrael is not like any other land. And no matter what we think, and no matter how much we want to protect all Jews living in that land, the main goal of being in Israel isn't to be a people like every other people, no matter how wonderful the scientific achievements and so on and so forth are. It's true, they're great. But the idea is the real achievements of the land of Israel are all spiritual. And any other benefits we see come from the blessings. And we'll see in this land that Hashem gives many, many opportunities for people to come closer to him. This is what we're seeing with the farmers every year, more and more, who are joining in the observation of the Shmitta year. Now, I want to mention, I just have piles here, but it's important. Oh, here it is. I want to mention that obviously these laws are linked to what will happen when Mashiach comes as well. Okay, because at that time, there will be such a high level of awareness that people are going to run to Hashem and Torah, and therefore will receive all these blessings. And we published a new book. It's called, I don't know if you can see it, Mashiach, Hope for Turbulent Times. And it's published in honor of and Le'ilui Nishmas Chana Bat Ephraim, who is the mother, the beloved mother of Dr. Eleanor Gaudis. Who's also sponsoring these classes. And if you are on this call, if I don't have your mailing address, please send it to me. Chana and I are going to send out hundreds of copies, hopefully this week and next. We want to get them to everybody before Shavuos. They're free. So we do have quite a list, but if you think that we don't have your address, please send it to me. You can send it to me at, I'm going to type my name, gmail.com. Okay. And we'll be happy to send you a copy. All right. All right. Are there any questions, comments before we go for the day?
A copy of what? What are you sending?
Mashiach, Hope for Turbulent Times. Hi, Judy.
Hi, Rivka.
Free. It's free. Send your address. We'll send you a copy. Okay. Don't send it here. Send it from to my email. You can text me. Okay. Most of you, I think I have your address. All right. Any questions or comments about Shmitta, the Parsha, the brachas, prosperity, unity, Shabbos? No?
Hi, Rivka. It's Doris.
Hi, Doris.
How are you?
Hi, Baruch Hashem.
Okay. Good, thank you. So maybe I'm tangential again, you know, that's my name. But in the time of Mashiach, all these questions that were not answered in this life, will they be answered then?
So that is a good question, actually. It's part of a process. So first of all, you should know that Breslov Torah, Breslov teachings are considered the Torah of Mashiach, meaning that a lot of the answers are here in Breslov. Okay, so that's number one. Number two, will everything be known and answered? We still will have human intellect. Okay, so as much as each of us are capable of, we'll have a lot of answers. Certainly, we'll have a lot of answers about our personal lives, our personal struggles. There's not one person who doesn't have many struggles in their lives, overwhelming struggles in their lives. So these are the kinds of answers that certainly we will be clarity on. Would you mind muting yourself because there's a siren in the background? But thank you, Doris. But what I want to say about this is that when we were talking about Meron earlier, I touched on it briefly. And I said, you know, I'm not asking why, because the idea is I don't believe I can understand why. Okay. And the why isn't necessarily what I need to be working on or what we need to be working on. We need unity. We need to support each other. We need to feel each other's pain. We need to have take action where we need to take action, and so on and so forth. But every single layer of why, it's impossible for us to know. And if I know one why, that Hashem determined that this was the time on Lag BaOmer for these people to join Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai in Gan Eden, I accept it with, by the way, a very broken, heavy heart. But the specifics of the whys, I'm assuming, are so in depth and so Kabbalistic and so about reincarnations and incarnations and Gogulam that I kind of, you know, I'm satisfied with the boundaries now. That being said, everybody has a different nature. Okay. And some people need to know more. Some people, you know, some people are just, okay, it's from Hashem, I accept. And whatever we need in the times of Mashiach, we will surely receive. Amen. However, what's also going to happen, Doris, and everyone else, is that our needs are going to have evolved by then. So what we need then may look very different than what we need now. Because as we grow spiritually, what we need changes. And, you know, we're doing a lot of that spiritual work now. We all are. We're all working on that now. Okay. Any more questions or comments?
I have one.
Yes.
Okay. So I laid out what you said. So now we're accustomed to having little and not being satisfied, and not that we're accustomed, but that's the reality right now. And we have illness and distraction from serving Hashem. And in times of Mashiach,
well, we have illness and destruction from serving
distraction from serving Hashem.
Oh, distraction. Okay.
And in the time of Mashiach, we'll have abundance, contentment with little, and no illness and peace of mind. So there's like a rate limiting factor that Hashem has placed for us to, you know, like it almost, I wonder if my idea is correct, that it's like we're kind of being forced to kind of go slowly and grow rather than boom, it happens and everything's great. And awesome. So you kind of just spoke into that about how our needs will be different. And we're all working on that. And I just need to hear from you, like what you can say about this to help me kind of understand the mechanism better.
Mechanism for why things are difficult, or?
Yeah, well, we're all really trying and struggling, and we know what will be in the end. So like we're being slowed down. Hashem's slowing us down. So, and throwing things away, and perhaps, based on our own like levels, whatever, where we're at. So
Okay.
I don't know. I'm just
So
think about systems. So I'm like having.
I know you're very organized. I know I'm seeing the chart in your head because I know you, Naomi. So this idea is that again, I was speaking also about this times of Mashiach, but I was also speaking about the brachas for fulfilling the Torah. So that is present at all times, including now. So to access all these blessings isn't just in the time of Mashiach, it's now. And how we access them is by coming closer and closer to Hashem and fulfilling the Torah as much as we can. I know everybody's in a different place, but never stopping to grow and never stopping to believe in Hashem's bracha. The belief in the bracha alone is essential. And I want to say one more thing that will help, I hope will help you and won't frustrate you. And that is this whole going back to that idea of trusting in Hashem and hoping in Hashem is the mechanism for now. Because the more we have the trust and the hope, okay, certainly the more we'll be besimcha, be happy, we'll be joyful. And all of that combined leads to us yearning for Hashem. And the only natural pipeline for this yearning that will connect us is Hashem's word, his Torah. His Torah it's the blueprint for creation. It's the guideline. It's the operating manual, operator's manual for our lives. And most of us come into life. I would say most of the people in this class right now, not everyone, have come into life and like me, you come into life and you're being given a Jaguar and you reach in the glove compartment for how do I drive this thing, and there's nothing there. Okay. And you're just like, oh, you're going to get accidents and you're going to go off the road if you can even get the thing started. Okay. So, we've been given this finely crafted neshama and body. And most people in the world are flailing. And so we have to keep reminding ourselves to go back to the Torah. And this whole double parsha is fascinating to me because it's really very simple. It starts with these laws of stop doing and start trusting. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Stop doing and start trusting. And the more the trust is there, the more the Bitachon is there, the more the simcha is there.
Yeah.
Less the pain is there. And I don't know, Baruch Hashem, I'm very, very blessed to have a lot of good role models and people in my life who are really just, I'm going to be besimcha, I'm going to be happy no matter what. I don't know if I mentioned to you Gitta Kramer, Rabbi Chaim Kramer's wife, but I was in Uman with her and her daughter, Rachel, was terminally ill. She got a terminal illness over the period of 6 months. And I was in Uman. It happened to be I was there at the same time with her and Reb Chaim and my husband. And she was lying. They didn't expect her to live out the day. And they flew over to pray, to daven, and by the Tzion. And I watched Gitta, who had been through breast cancer herself just a couple of years before. It's a publicly known story, so I'm not sharing anything that's not allowed to be shared, whose main question when she had breast cancer was, I need to be joyful. I want to be joyful no matter what. And I know that that's what I need to focus on is the trust and the joy. And she pushed herself and came out of it, Baruch Hashem. And then her daughter got very sick. And I was speaking to her and davening with her and just had this experience with her where I was watching her with her 40-year-old daughter with all these children at home, and the husband who has a difficult time, a disability. And I was watching this, and I was watching herself pushing herself to trust in Hashem and be joyful, no matter what the outcome. That was the key, no matter what the outcome. I remember, I honestly, that's changed my life, watching that fortitude and that strength in somebody in the face of real tragedy, just tremendous loss. And I watched her with a smile on her face, yet the tears streaming. And this idea that Hashem is giving us something, and yet we must trust him, even if it hurts. Because this world, we have a limited vision. Doris asked, I don't know if she's still here, but Doris asked, will I know the answers? And really what we mean when will we know the answers is we mean, will we know the answers to our suffering? That's really what we mean. Will we know why we had loss and grief and pain, and heartache and difficulties and everything so hard, and why? And again, the ultimate answer perhaps is the why is to turn to Hashem. He's calling us to turn to Hashem and trust in him. And because we have limited intellects, it feels like pain, but from the perspective of our neshama, of our soul, which is eternal, by the way, it isn't pain. It's just something, it's a lesson, a teaching we have to go through. And I want to say that's for ourselves. When we see anybody else in pain, I say we have to be a little shtickle atheistic, and we have to run to help them and not rely on Hashem to help them when we see someone else in pain. But when we see ourselves in pain, we want to turn to Hashem. Baruch Hashem, I know so many amazing people who have real difficulties in their lives. Somebody in particular I'm thinking of, who told me this very difficult illness, and she said, but it made me turn closer to Hashem. And I really admire and respect that. But it's not easy. Nobody says it's easy. Okay, I think we're going to go. God willing, we'll connect next week. I wish you all a great week and a good Shabbos, and thank you for coming.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chaya Rivka. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Bye.